going, and welcome back to another episode of Mood for Feud. I'm your host Katia, and today we're going to be talking about Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, who were both members of the very iconic rock band Fleetwood Mac. I do really enjoy Fleetwood Mac. I feel like it's one of those bands where the music has remained popular for so many generations. I'm not one of the hardcore fans. My favorite songs are definitely just the very popular ones like The Chain, Dreams, Landslide. I'm definitely into Fleetwood Mac the normal amount that the average person is probably into them. I have always found Stevie Nicks very fascinating. I get these really strong witchy vibes from her, which I know that a lot of people do believe that she is actually a practicing witch. Probably because of the way she dresses, but also a lot of her songs have witch metaphors in them, or kind of have that kind of witchcraft energy. Liken it a lot to Lana Del Rey, another one of my favorite artists. I also believe she is a witch, but there's just something really witchcrafty about these women, and I'm not meaning that in that way where people see a successful woman and then suddenly they're like, oh, she must be a witch, she must be into witchcraft, because it's just unbelievable to think that a woman could otherwise be so successful without there being some kind of mystical reasoning behind it. I'm not talking about it in that sense, okay? I'm meaning more in the sense that I just believe that these women would have the power to be really good manifestors, to have just a more intuitive understanding and sense of the world that we live in. I mean it in that way, okay? Not in the misogynistic way. So Stevie herself has actually denied being a witch, and also said that she doesn't really believe in witchcraft, which sounds exactly like something that a witch would say, right? Oh, I'm not a witch, what? I don't even believe in that stuff. Meanwhile, they're hexing us. So I'm not gonna let that deter me. In 2014, she did an interview with LA Times where they asked whether she was a witch, and she said, no, I'm not. I just wear black because it makes me look thinner, you idiots. And then this also wasn't really helped by the fact that she portrayed a witch in American Horror Story. So there we go. That was the last nail in the coffin for me. I truly believe she is a witch. So the reason I really wanted to dive into this feud, other than obviously being a Stevie Nicks fan, is that I read the book Daisy Jones and the Six. It's a book written by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Another one of her famous books is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which you might have heard about. And the book Daisy Jones and the Six was based on Fleetwood Mac. And I think the main characters, Daisy and Billy, were loosely based on Stevie and Lindsey's relationship. And I did really enjoy that book. And so I really wanted to look into the source material, you know? So yeah, as with any feud that we cover on Mood for Feud, make sure you let me know all of your thoughts. If you haven't done so already, please rate and review the show. You can leave me a written review on Apple Podcasts. You can also slide into my DMs. I'm on Instagram at Mood for Feud if you'd like to chat. And you can also follow the show. That actually really helps it as well. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and let's get into the episode. So Stevie Nicks was born Stephanie Lynn Nicks in Phoenix, Arizona. She was born May 26, 1948, and this makes her a Gemini. Oh my gosh, Gemini queen. I love Gemini women. I know they're an acquired taste, okay? But all the Gemini women that I've met have been 10 out of 10, so I love them. So her nickname Stevie actually came about because she, as a toddler, couldn't pronounce her name Stephanie, and so instead she would refer to herself as TD, and then that eventuated into the nickname Stevie, and she carried that nickname on throughout the rest of her life. She had a big affinity for music even as a baby. Her mum described that she would always respond super positively to music, and she started singing at a very young age. Now, Stevie's granddad was also really into music. He was a country and western singer, and he would actually travel on freight trains and play in bars, which honestly sounds like such a fun life. I don't know, it sounds like something that you could do back then, but you probably couldn't do today, where you just hop on the train from train to train and with your guitar and you just play songs everywhere you go. But he actually made majority of his income playing pool. So I think the music was like his passion, but then he played pool to like feed himself, you know? Stevie described that her granddad was a really good songwriter, but despite playing the harmonica, fiddle, and the guitar, he just wasn't the best musician. And she says that she considered herself in this way as well, like she was at her core more of a songwriter rather than a musician. When Stevie was just 4 years old, her granddad taught her how to sing duets with him, and one of the first duets she recalls singing with him is Are You Mine by Red Savine. Now, Stevie's dad was actually the vice president for Greyhound buses, which is a massive chain of, I want to say, interstate buses in America. I'm not going to lie, the only reason I know Greyhound bus is from that true crime story, that really infamous one where there was like a cannibalism incident on one of these buses. But they are incredibly popular, and yeah, her dad was the vice president, so I don't know, it's giving wealth. So because her dad was the vice president for Greyhound buses, it did mean that he often had to move for work, and so Stevie and her family moved a lot. For pretty much her whole upbringing, I don't think they were ever in one spot for more than 5 years. Her family spent time living in Phoenix, LA, Albuquerque, El Paso, Salt Lake City, then LA again, then San Francisco. Like, it seems like they were continuously on the move. And so Stevie described that this made her really adaptable, but it also meant that she didn't really hold on to grudges when she had them, because, you know, when she made friends, she knew she was only going to be there for potentially a very short amount of time. And so she just didn't have time to hold grudges, because potentially they could move again before these things got resolved. It just meant that she learned to be quite resilient. And I found that so interesting, because I'd never really thought about the fact that to hold a grudge against someone, particularly in school, like a friend, it does kind of only happen if you know that there's enough time to resolve the grudge and then eventually become friends again. But yeah, I guess if you're constantly on the move, you just have to forgive and forget. She described that growing up, she loved listening to the Ronettes, the Supremes, Beach Boys, Spinners, and particularly R&B music. So it sounds like she was really into the group bands dynamic thing. And when she was a teenager, her parents let her take guitar lessons. So they rented her a guitar and they hired a Spanish classical guitarist to teach her. And when the Spanish guitar teacher decided to move back to Spain to study, Stevie's parents actually bought his guitar, and then this became her first proper guitar, like the first one that was hers that she owned. And this was also the guitar that Stevie would write her first song on. She wrote it on her 16th birthday, and it was titled I've Loved and I've Lost. And the song was about her crush, who she was really into and super in love with, getting together with her best friend. And so that heartbreak of watching, you know, two people that she had strong feelings for be together, and her kind of being on the outside of that, is what inspired her to write the song. She says about it, quote, I finished that song hysterically crying, and I was hooked. From that day forward, when I was in my room playing my guitar, nobody would come in without knocking. Nobody disturbed me. You know, obviously she was 16, so this would have definitely been, yeah, puppy love. But I will say, it's those heartbreaking moments that often inspire people the most, or lead them to write the best songs, in my opinion. And I almost feel like heartbreak is to songwriting what acid is to painting. Probably. I don't know. I don't really paint or take acid. But you know how people who paint will always say that their best work or their most creative minds are when they're taking hallucinogenics? And I feel like heartbreak is like the big drug for songwriting. Now, Stevie described that her parents were super supportive of her songwriting. They would even let her skip dinner if they could hear that she was in her room writing. And so she spent her late teen years really focusing on songwriting and developing a big passion for music, and learning how to express her feelings or take all her emotions and turn them into music. When Stevie was 17, her parents relocated to Palo Alto in California, and she attended Menlo Atherton High School. And during her time at this high school, she decided to attend a church social, and this is where she actually meets Lindsey Buckingham. So they were pretty young when they met. She was looking back on this time and she recalled, quote, "I went to a kind of church meeting that nobody really went to for church. Everybody went to get out of the house on Wednesday night and it was fun. Even I went and I didn't go anywhere." Lindsey walked into the room and sat down and started playing a song that I just happened to know every word and harmony perfect. California Dreaming, and I thought he was absolutely stunning, so I kind of casually maneuvered my way over. He was somewhat, I guess, ever so slightly impressed, not to let me know it, but he did sing another song with me, which made me know he did like it. Okay, 2 things. First of all, why are church youth groups always never about church? I remember even when I was growing up, I had some friends who would go to youth group and they would be the least religious people I know, and it was really just an excuse to kind of go out and socialize. So I love that this is a universal experience, and I also love that this is an intergenerational experience. Teenagers really are just socializing under the guise of wanting to learn more about the Bible. This is also the very definition of a meet cute. I mean, I can just picture it perfectly, guy with his guitar singing a song she loves that she knows the harmony to, and imagine being in that room and then 10 years later these two are in Fleetwood Mac and you just got to see the very first unofficial Lindsey Stevie concert. I don't know. I can imagine it was just a really cool moment. So the following year, when Stevie was 18, her family once again is relocating to Chicago, but Stevie decides to stay in California and she's going to attend San Jose State University, majoring in speech communication with a minor in psychology, with the aim of becoming a teacher. However, before she managed to finish her degree, with her father's permission, she actually dropped out of university to pursue music full-time. So really her parents were really supportive of her songwriting, it sounds like, and I feel like they recognized early on that she had a real talent for it, but also probably having her granddad already showing that you can kind of get by in life with being a singer-songwriter probably maybe helped. Seems like they were fully on board with it, which is cool. Okay, on to Lindsey Buckingham. So Lindsey Adams Buckingham was born in Palo Alto, California. He's born October 3rd, 1949, and this makes him a Libra, and October 3rd is obviously Mean Girls Day, so go Lindsey, certified mean girl. Lindsey grew up in San Francisco with his 2 older brothers. Now, one of his older brothers, Gregory Buckingham, was an incredible swimmer, and he actually won a silver medal at the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City, which kind of makes me feel bad for the 3rd brother, because imagine growing up in a household and one of your brothers is an Olympic medal winner and then your other brother is in one of the biggest rock bands of all time. Lindsey's first guitar was a toy Mickey Mouse guitar that he would play along to his brother's vinyls, and when he was playing along to these vinyls, his parents realized that he actually had real talent for the guitar, and they upgraded him to a harmony guitar. So that was his first not toy guitar, I guess. Lindsey never took guitar lessons, and he also doesn't know how to read music, so he's completely self-taught, which I kind of love that. I find it so impressive when people can kind of learn a craft just through doing. By age 13, Lindsey had taken a big interest in folk music, and he was also influenced a lot by banjo methods, and this actually led to him developing a finger-picking style, so he never played with a guitar pick. Lindsey attended Menlo Atherton High School, which was the same school that Stevie went to for her last couple years of high school, and while he was in high school, he performed in a psychedelic and folk rock band named Fritz Rabin Memorial Band. So this band actually started as a talent show, and then it kind of grew from there. I tried to find out who Fritz Rabin is, and there were no hits on Google. So, the only hits that would come up would be about the memorial band. So I feel like if it is a memorial band, they did a bad job at keeping the memory of the person alive, because there's no info on them. Later, the band name was shortened to just Fritz, probably because Fritz Rabin Memorial Band is a bit of a mouthful, and Lindsey was the bassist and vocalist. So shortly after Lindsey finished high school, 2 of the band members in Fritz decided they were going to leave because they were going off to college. And the remaining band members decided it would probably be a good idea to get some female vocals into the band because it was an all-male band up until then. So in 1967, Stevie joins Fritz as the female vocals. It's actually unclear if it was Lindsey who invited her to play or if it was another band member. I saw conflicting accounts of this, so I'm not entirely sure. Because I think at this point, Lindsey and Stevie hadn't really been in contact. They'd just had that one meet cute at the church social. And at this point in time, Stevie also had no experience playing in a band. She was still largely songwriting and singing as a solo artist. So the band Fritz played at schools, graduation parties, but they did also perform at some small gigs throughout California, and Stevie acknowledged that these gigs are what inspired her to develop her stage performance. And I think it was a good low stakes kind of environment for her to experiment with, because even though the band was getting hired to play gigs, these weren't like massive, they weren't playing to like huge crowds and stadiums. And so I think it gave her a good chance to figure out the kind of stage performance that she would like to give. And for the next 3 years, the band did slowly grow, and they even recorded several songs, although I'm not sure what happened to these, but they're nowhere to be found. I think people have tried to search for them and unearth them, and there's been no luck. So probably in someone's granddad's basement or something is some like high value recording from Fritz. So even though Stevie originally joined as a female backing vocalist, she was very quickly becoming a standout in the band, and she became really well known for her interesting stage presence, which I can definitely see this happening very quickly. I feel like Stevie Nicks is someone who has such a cool, confident, unique aura about her, and definitely when she's on stage, like, she's the person you're watching, and she definitely strikes me as someone that would be difficult to ignore. In spite of being somewhat the standout member of the band, Stevie has since said that she felt the band members never really took her seriously. In her biography titled Gold Dust Woman, she says, quote, "Nobody in that band wanted me as their girlfriend because I was too ambitious for them. They all thought I was in it for the attention and didn't take me seriously at all. I was just a girl singer and they hated the fact that I got a lot of credit." Which, like, disappointing but not surprising, am I right? Although Fritz was starting to become a well-known local act, particularly in the San Francisco Bay music scene, Fritz did disband in 1970. Now, although Stevie and Lindsey had been creating music together under Fritz for 3 years, they didn't actually start dating until the band split. And this is also when they made plans to leave for LA because they wanted to further their music career and they felt like in LA would be better opportunities for them. Stevie recalled that Fritz disbanding was really the catalyst for them becoming a couple. She said she wasn't really sure if they ever would have started dating if they weren't going through that time together, but that going through the breakup of Fritz kind of pushed them together, which kind of makes sense to me in a way because they would have been in very similar life stages and they obviously had similar ambitions of moving to LA and becoming big. So as they're making their plans to move, Lindsey actually gets mono, and so this severely delays their moving plans, and Stevie stays behind as well to kind of take care of Lindsey and wait till they're both in a better position to go. This does, however, give Stevie some more time to develop her music persona and practice her craft, and then in 1972, her and Lindsey finally make the big move to LA. And people recall them being somewhat of a power couple. They obviously looked quite iconic. Lindsey Buckingham had this big mop of curly brown hair and then like super bright blue eyes, and then Stevie had this really long blonde hair, and I can just imagine that they would have been quite striking to come across, and they just looked significant. So Lindsey and Stevie decide to form a folk rock duo named Buckingham Nicks, and they actually got signed by Polydor Records and released an album in 1973. Now, like I said, Stevie and Lindsey are a very striking couple, and their album cover is also incredibly striking because they're both topless in it. However, the album Buckingham Nicks did flop, and so their label decided to drop them. And this is where things started to get a bit tough for the two. Money was getting super tight. They started to fight and argue a lot, and really the whole relationship started to sour. Stevie recalls having to work as both a waitress and a cleaner just to help make ends meet. And then Lindsey was mainly like recording and making tracks, but he did tour for a little bit as part of Don Everly's backing band, and then that ended badly, so it just felt like everything was falling apart, and Stevie was considering packing up and getting out of LA and just calling it quits, which I will say I'm surprised that her dad didn't just lend her money. Maybe that wasn't as much of a thing back then, but in my mind it sounds like he was incredibly well off, and it also sounds like they were very much struggling, although maybe it was just the kind of family where that wasn't something that happened. So as is often the case, just when the two are about to call it quits, their luck changes, because Mick Fleetwood is visiting Sound City Studios in LA. Mick Fleetwood is obviously one half of Fleetwood Mac, and he was meeting up with a recording engineer, Keith Olsen, who was playing him the track Frozen Love, which is from the Buckingham Nicks album. And he was playing it for him because it was one of the tracks that he himself had recorded. And yeah, I guess he was just showing Mick Fleetwood his kind of recording style. And I looked this song up and it is an absolute bop, so 10 out of 10 recommend giving it a listen. So Mick Fleetwood is listening to the song Frozen Love and he's really impressed with the guitar playing. So he asks Keith, like, who's on the guitar? Like, I love this sound, it's so amazing. And Keith says to him, that's Lindsey Buckingham, and he's actually here recording a demo today if you want to meet him. Now, at the time, Fleetwood Mac was down to 3 members. There was Mick Fleetwood, and then John and Christine McVie. And so they were desperate for some new members, and particularly they were looking for a guitarist. And when Mick meets Lindsey, he makes an offer to Lindsey to be in the band without even auditioning him. And Lindsey says he'll accept the offer, but only on the condition that Stevie also joins the band. Now, Fleetwood Mac wasn't really looking for another vocalist or another songwriter, so they were apprehensive towards this, but they were really keen on getting Lindsey into the band, so they decided to agree. And honestly, I have to say, I kind of rate Lindsey for doing this because it would have been easy. You know, like I said, at this time, they're struggling for money. Their relationship isn't going great. They're fighting a lot. And yet in that moment, he was still like, okay, no, if I join the band, Stevie joins the band too. So Stevie and Lindsey joined the band, and this also mends their relationship. Probably a lot of their arguments were stemming from the lack of success of Buckingham Nicks and also the lack of money. Stevie recalls really consciously talking to Lindsey and making the decision to work on their relationship. She said, quote, I said, okay, this is what we've been working for since 1968. And so, Lindsey, you and I have to sew this relationship back up. We have too much to lose here. We need to put our problems behind us. Maybe we're not going to have any more problems because we're finally going to have some money. And I won't be a fucking waitress. So now the Fleetwood Mac band consisted of Stevie and Lindsey, Christine and John McVie, and then Mick Fleetwood as well. And together they release an album titled Fleetwood Mac. And this album does incredibly well. Up until this point, Fleetwood Mac hadn't really been a top-selling band. That originated in the UK, moved to America to further their song career, and they just hadn't really taken off yet. But this album propelled them into the popular music sphere. And 2 of the, in my mind, most popular songs to come from the album were in fact written by Stevie. So you know what? She actually did have a lot to bring to the band, and maybe they shouldn't have doubted her. And these 2 songs are Rhiannon and Landslide. Now, apparently Stevie did actually start writing these songs in her Buckingham Nicks era when her and Lindsey were going through a super rough patch. And so we do start to see, I guess, how influential Stevie and Lindsey's relationship is for songwriting. Yeah, as I said, the album is a massive success. It reaches #1 on the US charts, and the band had a massive influx of money, a massive influx of fame, and they did actually struggle with this. I think it's almost like a double-edged sword if your first album is a massive hit, because there's this pressure that you get from it to release a second album that's either just as good or better, and it would be incredibly difficult to not accidentally end up becoming a one-hit wonder. And the band knew this. They knew that their second album would have to be as impactful as Fleetwood Mac. At the same time, they were experiencing levels of fame that they'd never felt before, and they suddenly had a lot more access to drugs and alcohol. And also keep in mind that the band currently consists of Mick Fleetwood and then 2 couples. And I think there's this growing tension, and there being so many relationships in the band as well, ultimately just meant there were a lot of emotions circulating around and a lot of really strong feelings to one another. And so in 1976, 1 year after releasing the Fleetwood Mac album, Stevie and Lindsey break up. And then shortly after this, John and Christine McVie are divorcing, and then Mick Fleetwood is also divorcing his wife Jenny because he finds out that she's been cheating on him with his best friend. Ouch. And then Mick and Stevie start having an affair, and so the whole thing is just incredibly messy. There's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of breakup, there's a lot of heartbreak, there's a lot of everything, and the band is kind of in a wreck. But as a wise woman once said to you 20 minutes ago, heartbreak is to music what acid is to painting, probably. And so in 1977, the band releases the album Rumours, and all the songs on this album were inspired by this turmoil that the band were going through. And the Rumours album also won them a Grammy. Now, some notable tracks off this album were Dreams, which was written by Stevie, and Dreams is about a relationship that's on the rocks, right? Like, we've got the lyrics, "Now here you go again, you say you want your freedom, well, who am I to keep you down? Like a heartbeat drives you mad, in the stillness of remembering what you had and what you lost and what you had." And then we get the chorus, "Thunder only happens when it's raining, players only love you when they're playing." Now, when Stevie first showed the band this song, they didn't actually love it. They found it a little bit boring, which at first I was like, what? How can that be? The song is absolutely iconic. But I did listen to the instrumental just to kind of hear it from the band's perspective, because obviously Stevie was the vocalist and it is a bit repetitive, so I can see why they would have been hesitant towards it from a band perspective, but I think Stevie's vocals just really make the song what it is. And there's no denying that this song is super iconic. Do you remember that TikToker that made the video of him skateboarding and lip syncing to Dreams and drinking ocean spray cranberry juice, and then the video blew up to the point where Ocean Spray couldn't keep up with the demand of cranberry juice, and then they made so much money that they actually bought the guy who made a video of him skateboarding a pickup truck? Does anyone else remember this? Because I do. That was fucking wild. So it's pretty crazy that that guy would have never got a pickup truck from Ocean Spray if the song Dreams didn't exist. And the only reason the song Dreams existed is because Stevie met Lindsey, dated, then had a terrible breakup. So, you know, crazy world we live in. Now, also on the album Rumours is a song that Lindsey wrote about him and Stevie's breakup. And this is the track Go Your Own Way, another super popular Fleetwood Mac song. Lindsey recalls that his breakup with Stevie was definitely made worse by the fact that they were both in this band together. He says, quote, "I was completely devastated when she took off, and yet I had to make hits for her. I had to do a lot of things for her that I really didn't want to do, and yet I did them. So on one level, I was a complete professional in rising above that, but there was also a lot of pent-up frustration and anger towards Stevie and me for many years." And we kind of see this like anger and rage get taken out in the song Go Your Own Way. We get the lyrics, "Loving you isn't the right thing to do. How can I ever change things that I feel? If I could, baby, I'd give you my world. How can I when you won't take it from me?" And then obviously the chorus, "You can go your own way. You can call it another lonely day." Now, also in the song Go Your Own Way, we get the lyrics, "Tell me why everything turned around, packing up, shacking up is all you want to do." And Stevie hated this line. She recalls, quote, "I very much resented him telling the world that packing up, shacking up with different men was all I wanted to do. He knew it wasn't true. It was just an angry thing that he said. Every time those words would come on stage, I wanted to go over and kill him. He knew it, so he really pushed my buttons through that. It was like, I'll make you suffer for leaving me, and I did." And I will say that this is the probably most interesting tension about Stevie and Lindsey's feud or breakup or whatever you want to call it, because they're still in the same band together. And I can't even imagine having to go out on tours and perform these songs that are about you and your ex is also right there on stage with you. I mean, that has to be such a unique feeling. I don't think a lot of people could relate to that in any sense. So things are obviously not great between Lindsey and Stevie at this point, and it's almost made worse because although Dreams is about a rocky relationship and a lot of people assume that Stevie wrote that about Lindsey, the song that Stevie actually wrote about their breakup was called Silver Springs. She says, quote, "I wrote Silver Springs about Lindsey. We were in Maryland somewhere driving under a freeway sign that said Silver Spring, Maryland, and I loved the name. Silver Springs sounded like a pretty fabulous place to me. You could be my Silver Springs. That's just a whole symbolic thing of what you could have been to me." And so she writes this really amazing, it's almost like a love letter to the relationship that they could have had, but that they didn't, just because of the types of people they were and the way that it didn't work out. And so Stevie really wanted this track to be included on the album because this was like her side of the relationship. You know, Lindsey got to have his song Go Your Own Way where he accused her of packing up and shacking up, and this was going to be her expression of the events that happened. However, the band ultimately decided not to include Silver Springs on the Rumours album. And this is because this was still a time where a lot of albums were recorded on vinyl. And so you literally had to fit the music onto a vinyl. And there just wasn't enough time for Silver Springs to be included. And this caused a lot of tension in the band, and Stevie was incredibly pissed about this. Now, to make things almost worse, they end up putting Silver Springs as a B-side to the Go Your Own Way vinyl. Now, this works well in theory because the songs do go together, right? They're like what's the thing? Two sides of the same coin. But it almost adds insult to the injury because Go Your Own Way is on the Rumours album. And so when people are buying this vinyl with, you know, one side having Go Your Own Way on it and the other side having Silver Springs on it, they're not going to necessarily turn over the vinyl to listen to Silver Springs, because when people purchase a single on a vinyl, they don't necessarily flip over to the B-side. The whole reason they bought that was for the track Go Your Own Way. And so the song Silver Springs is kind of forgotten, and in this case, literally overshadowed by Go Your Own Way. So to this day, nobody knows for sure why Stevie and Lindsey broke up, but there are a few theories that I came across. So some people say that Lindsey really wanted to start a family and that Stevie didn't. Others presume that Lindsey cheated on Stevie. Some say Stevie cheated on Lindsey. I think she has actually confirmed in an interview before that she did have an affair with someone while they were together, but I don't think that this is actually what caused them to break up. Other people presume that Stevie was too non-committal because she likes traveling. You know, she grew up traveling, her whole upbringing, moving from place to place. So she's like not necessarily someone that feels comfortable being tied down. And then other people would say that Lindsey's big love was Stevie, but Stevie's big love was music and the songs that she wrote, and so that was always a tension between them. I think the most probable cause out of everything I read online was that Lindsey was abusive. And Stevie has said that when her and Lindsey first joined Fleetwood Mac, he developed major trust issues and that he would often get quite jealous of her and just in general envious. She says that Lindsey also blames Fleetwood Mac for him and Stevie's relationship ending. He always thought that if they just gave Buckingham Nicks another go and remained a duo, that none of that would have happened. Stevie does share a little bit about this abuse in her biography. She states that it was actually Lindsey's idea for both of them to be topless in the Buckingham Nicks cover, and that she didn't feel comfortable doing it but felt pressured into it by him. She describes that he threw her to the floor during an argument, and then in 1980, when Fleetwood Mac were performing actually a concert in Wellington, New Zealand, Lindsey tried to trip Stevie up on stage and then attempted to kick her, and afterwards Christine McVie confronted him about it, but he allegedly never apologized. And then he also stated that he didn't recall any of this happening. And then Stevie also describes that in 1987, her and Lindsey got into a really bad argument and he actually slapped her and started choking her. And she recalls thinking in that moment that she was going to die. And the band stood up for her, and that was the last time that we know of him laying hands on her. Yeah, Stevie has since said that she's moved on from it and they're okay now, but it's just such icky vibes, and it does kind of seem like he was very controlling, probably didn't love all the fame and attention that she was getting. I mean, it is all alleged, like there were never any police records or whatever, but that's my prediction anyway. So even though Stevie and Lindsey quite consciously decide to not let their breakup impact Fleetwood Mac, and they continue to perform with Fleetwood Mac for several years, Lindsey does leave the band in 1987, and then Stevie leaves in 1991, and they both decide to pursue some solo careers. In 1991, Stevie does actually perform a solo gig at Whiskey A Go Go, and if that is a familiar name to you, it's because 3 years after that, Oasis will be performing their meth gig at Whiskey A Go Go. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say meth gig, make sure you check out the episode that I did on Liam and Noel Gallagher from Oasis, because those two went crazy. 4 years after Stevie leaves Fleetwood Mac, Mick Fleetwood actually pulls the plug on the band and they break up. However, the band members all do still stay in touch. I think Christine McVie and Lindsey Buckingham record a couple songs together, do some collaborations. Stevie's still in touch with Mick Fleetwood, and so in 1997 they do all agree to bring the band back together and go on a tour, and they decide to do an MTV special as part of the tour, and they also decide to record Silver Springs as part of this. Up to this point in time, you would only really know about Silver Springs if you decided to buy that single of Go Your Own Way and then also decided to flip that vinyl over and listen to the B-side of it. So not a lot of people knew about this song or had ever heard it before, and this is like the first time that Fleetwood Mac is performing this song to a big crowd. And so for the first time in 20 years since writing this song, Stevie gets to perform her side of the breakup, her version of events. And we get the lyrics, "Time cast a spell on you, but you won't forget me. I'll follow you down till the sound of my voice will haunt you." And oh my gosh, it is such an incredible performance. I will definitely be posting snips of it to my Instagram. It is just so powerful, so impactful. And I don't know, like, I am a bit of a believer in everything happens for a reason, but I truly think that the words "time cast a spell on you, but you won't forget me" hit so much harder knowing that it was written 20 years ago. Like, it almost needed to marinate for 20 years for that line to just hit so much harder. So Stevie's giving an amazing performance. Lindsey is right next to her. He's doing his iconic finger-picking guitar movements. And when she gets to the chorus, she turns directly to Lindsey, looks him straight into the eyes, and sings the words, "You'll never get away from the sound of the woman that loves you." Oh my gosh. I have no words. Like, I actually, which is not helpful for a podcast, but I truly have no words. It gives me goosebumps. The way they're both just connecting, you can almost feel all that history between them. And she was right. Lindsey wouldn't get away from the sound of the woman that loves him, because after performing this song, even though it had been written 20 years prior, it becomes a huge hit. It goes into the top 40, it is nominated for a Grammy, and it is also put into the 2005 remastered version of Rumours, and it becomes a live performance staple for Fleetwood Mac and one of their most iconic songs. I would say shame on you, Mick Fleetwood, for not putting this onto the original album in 1977, but like I said, there's just something that makes the song better, knowing that she had to wait 20 years to perform it. I don't know. So Fleetwood Mac do continue to work together on and off. Like I said, they release a couple of remastered albums, they do random tours here and there, but Stevie and Lindsey and some of the other members are still pursuing solo careers as well. Now, in 2018, so this is over 40 years after the breakup, there is still a lot of tension between Stevie and Lindsey. And Stevie, girl, what happened to the no grudge mentality that you had when you were growing up? The band is set to tour again, and Lindsey asks if they can perhaps delay the Fleetwood Mac tour dates because he wants to promote some of his solo music, and Stevie says no, we cannot move those dates. Make it work. And then when Fleetwood Mac wins Music Care's Person of the Year award and Stevie is giving the acceptance speech, allegedly Lindsey is snickering and rolling his eyes while she's talking, and this really bars her up. Now, I did watch the acceptance speech and the camera isn't on Lindsey the whole time, so I could have just missed it, but I can't say I saw him snickering. I did see him laughing, but also all the other band members were laughing too. Like her speech was really nice and heartfelt, but it was also, like, I'm not gonna lie, I love you, Stevie, but it was a bit rambly. So all the bandmates in the background are starting to talk to one another. I think at one point Christine and John McVie literally start dancing together. Like, they're having fun, they're like being silly goofy back there. But anyway, the rumor is that Lindsey was snickering and that this really pissed her off, and then shortly after this acceptance speech, Mick Fleetwood actually asks Lindsey to leave the band. Now, Lindsey claims that it was Stevie that gave them the ultimatum and said to Mick Fleetwood, like, it's me or Lindsey. But she denies this. She maintains that even though she did find it difficult to work with him and that she herself had considered leaving Fleetwood Mac because of the toxic work environment between her and Lindsey, she never gave them an ultimatum and never asked them to fire him. So who really knows what happened there? Apparently the two haven't spoken since 2019, which is when Lindsey underwent open heart surgery. So that's kind of the end of the feud there. What do you guys think? I mean, it's hard to deny that these two didn't have a super powerful relationship together because really this breakup spanned decades. I mean, they broke up in the 70s and in 2018 it's still causing tension and fights in the band. I guess at the very least we can say that they brought out big emotions in one another. Obviously the abuse allegations are gross and they put a whole dark, sinister spin on this relationship, but the romance girly in me, like watching that Silver Spring performance from 1997, it's like watching a dark romance. Like, it's very poetic. But yeah, let me know what you think, and also head over to my Instagram at Mood for Feud. I'll be posting some clips from the Silver Springs performance there. Yeah, make sure you let me know all of your thoughts. What do you think is the reason behind Stevie and Lindsey's breakup? Do you agree that it's almost a blessing in disguise that Silver Springs was left off of the original album? I would love to know all your thoughts on this feud. Slide into my DMs on Instagram at Mood for Feud. If you have any episode suggestions, make sure you let me know. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast if you enjoyed it, and follow the show so you never miss an episode. Oh yeah, one other thing, I am going to be releasing fortnightly now, just while I get through all my life admin and get myself into a spot where I have some more free time. But I hope you still keep listening. I really appreciate everyone that does keep up with my very irregular release schedule. But yeah, I think fortnightly will just give me some more consistency again and just give me time to not rush the episodes. And yeah, I hope that this won't deter you from listening regularly. But thanks again so much for listening. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.